The rooms that broke you weren't actually trying to make you smaller. They were desperately attempting to contain something they recognized as dangerously powerful. Every time they tried to clip your wings, they were actually acknowledging your ability to soar. Every attempt to silence your voice was a terrified response to its truth. Every effort to push you into the background was an admission of how brightly you shine in the foreground. Those rooms didn't diminish you. They revealed their own limitations. And today, we're going to explore how those very attempts to contain you were actually building the strength you'd need to break free. There's a room that still haunts you. We all have one. The walls might be different. The faces may have changed, but that feeling, that gut-wrenching, soul-crushing feeling of being made small remains the same. Maybe it was a classroom where laughter followed your every answer. Perhaps it was a family dinner table where your dreams were served with a side of ridicule. Or that office meeting where your voice shook so hard you thought it would shatter the windows. You remember how your shoulders curved inward, trying to make yourself invisible. How your throat tightened when you wanted to speak. How your heart hammered against your ribs like it was trying to break free from the cage of other people's expectations. But here's what they never told you. Those rooms where they tried to shrink you, they were actually building your strength. Every dismissive glance, every cutting remark, every time they tried to clip your wings, they were unknowingly giving you the very tools you'd need to soar. Let me tell you something that might sound strange at first. Your pain has a purpose, not because suffering is noble, but because it's transformative. When someone tries to make you feel small, they're actually revealing their own limitations, not yours. Think about that for a moment. Really let it sink in. You see, people who try to diminish others are actually advertising their own fear of greatness. They're showing you exactly what they're afraid of in themselves. And once you understand this, really understand it, everything changes. Remember that supervisor who told you your ideas were too ambitious? They weren't really talking about your ideas. They were expressing their own fear of change. That relative who scoffed at your dreams. They were really voicing their own regret for dreams they never dared to chase. But here's where it gets interesting. You don't have to accept their limitations as your own. In fact, you never did. You've just been carrying around their baggage like it was your own. It's time to set it down. Think about a plant growing through concrete. The concrete doesn't make the plant weak. It makes it stronger. It forces the plant to become more resourceful, more determined, more resilient. That's exactly what these challenging rooms have done for you. But let's be honest. This isn't just about standing tall in rooms that once made you feel small. It's about understanding why you ever allowed yourself to feel small in the first place. And this is where many of us need to have an uncomfortable conversation with ourselves. Why do we give others so much power over our self-worth? Why do we hand over the keys to our confidence to people who have no intention of driving us toward our dreams? The truth is, we often shrink ourselves before others even have the chance to do it for us. We walk into rooms already apologizing for our presence. We dim our light because we're afraid it might make others uncomfortable. We lower our voice because we're scared it might shake the status quo. But what if, and this is a big, what if we've been looking at this all wrong? What if those rooms where they tried to make you feel small were actually life's way of preparing you for something bigger? You see, life has this fascinating way of using pressure to create diamonds. Every time you felt small but chose to show up anyway, you were developing a strength that can't be taught. It can only be earned. Every time you swallowed your fear and spoke up, even with a trembling voice, you were building a reservoir of courage that would serve you for years to come. This isn't about revenge. It's not about proving them wrong. It's about proving yourself right. It's about understanding that your worth isn't determined by the square footage of someone else's comfort zone. How many times have you walked into a room and automatically assumed your place was in the background? How often have you edited yourself before even speaking, worried about how others might react? These are the subtle ways we continue to make ourselves small. Long after we've left those initial rooms of diminishment, the real transformation begins when you realize that standing tall isn't about physical height or speaking the loudest. It's about owning your space in the world. It's about understanding that your presence is not a privilege granted by others. It's your birthright. When you walk into a room now, do you carry the weight of past rooms with you? Do you still feel the echo of those old voices telling you to do less, dream less? If so, you're not alone. But here's the crucial difference, and now you get to decide what to do with those echoes. You can let them continue to shape your present, or you can use them as contrast, a dark background that makes your current light shine even brighter. Those very rooms that once made you feel small have given you the exact perspective you need to help others stand tall. This journey isn't just about personal transformation, it's about creating a ripple effect. When you learn to stand tall in rooms that once made you feel small, you become a living testament to the power of resilience. You become the person you needed when you were younger, scared, and unsure. Think about the power of that for a moment. Every time you refuse to shrink, you're not just changing your own story. You're giving permission to everyone watching to expand into their full potential. You're silently saying, if I can do this, so can you. But let's talk about what standing tall really means, because there's a crucial misconception we need to address. Standing tall isn't about dominating a room or overpowering others. It's not about becoming the very thing that once made you feel small. That would be merely replacing one form of fear with another. True strength, real, authentic, lasting strength, comes from a place of inner security, so profound that you no longer need to prove anything to anyone. It's about being so grounded in your worth that other people's attempts to diminish you feel like desperate attempts to blow out the sun with a breath mint. Have you ever noticed how the most genuinely confident people in a room are often the quietest? They don't need to announce their presence because they're completely at peace with who they are. That's the kind of strength we're talking about building. Let me share something that might shift your perspective entirely. Those rooms where you felt small, they were actually measuring stations. They were measuring not your worth, but your willingness to believe in yourself when no one else. They were testing not your ability, but your determination to remain true to your essence when everything around you suggested you should change. Every time you felt that knot in your stomach, every time your voice quivered, every time you wanted to disappear, those weren't moments of weakness. They were moments of awakening. Each of these experiences was actually a chisel, sculpting you into someone who could handle bigger rooms, bigger challenges, bigger dreams. We keep waiting for permission. Permission to speak up. Permission to take up space. Permission to be fully ourselves. We're looking for some external authority to give us the green light to exist in our full power. The truth that will set you free is that no one is coming to give you that permission. No one can give you what you haven't given yourself first. The authority you're seeking lives within you, and it's been there all along, waiting for you to claim it. Consider the times you've held back your truth because you thought it might make others uncomfortable. Think about the ideas you've swallowed because you feared they were too big, too bold, too much. Each of these moments wasn't just a personal loss. It was a loss for everyone who might have been inspired, helped, or transformed by your courage to be fully yourself. You see, when you make yourself small, you're not just diminishing your own light. You're depriving the world of the unique gift that only you can offer. Your voice, your perspective, your presence, these aren't just personal assets. They're contributions to the collective human experience. But let's be practical for a moment. How do you actually begin to stand tall in rooms that once made you feel small? It starts with understanding that your presence in any room is not a mistake. You're not there by accident. Whether you were invited or you invited yourself, you have every right to be there, to speak, to contribute, to exist in your full power. The next step is to recognize that the room hasn't changed. You have. Or rather, you're changing right now, in this moment, as you begin to see yourself through new eyes. The walls may be the same, the faces might be familiar, but you're not the same person who first felt small in that space. Think about water for a moment. When confined to a small container, it takes that shape. But water itself is limitless. It can be as vast as an ocean or as powerful as a waterfall. You've been like that water, conforming to the containers others have placed you in. But you're not meant to be contained. You're meant to flow, to expand, to reach your full potential. The real transformation happens when you stop trying to fit into rooms and start allowing rooms to adjust to your presence. This isn't about arrogance. It's about authenticity. It's about showing up as your full self and trusting that the right people will appreciate that, while understanding that those who don't simply aren't your people. There's a particular kind of silence that fills a room when someone speaks their truth. It's not the uncomfortable silence of awkwardness, but the profound silence of recognition. That's the kind of silence that changes lives. That's the kind of silence that transforms rooms that once felt confining into spaces of infinite possibility. But let's talk about something that often holds us back: the fear of outgrowing people. It's a real fear, and it's one that keeps many of us playing small long after we've outgrown those constraining rooms. We worry that if we stand at our full height, we'll lose connections, relationships, maybe even parts of our identity that we've grown comfortable with. Here's the truth that truth often feels like loss at first. When you begin to stand tall, some relationships will feel the strain. Some people will try harder to make you small again. They'll use every tool they know: guilt, shame, manipulation, even love, to try to keep you at a size they can handle. Remember this: their reaction to your growth is not your responsibility. Their discomfort with your evolution is not your burden to carry. You're not growing to spite them, you're growing because that's what living things are supposed to do. Think about trees for a moment. A tree doesn't apologize for reaching toward the sun. It doesn't feel guilty about casting a longer shadow as it grows. It simply does what it was designed to do: grow, expand, reach. Your growth is just as natural, just as necessary, just as beautiful. But growth isn't always about reaching higher. Sometimes it's about growing deeper roots. It's about becoming so grounded in your worth that when those old rooms try to make you feel small again, you can smile with compassion, understanding that their attempts to diminish you are really just reflections of their own unmet needs for growth. Let's address something that many of us struggle with: the voice in our head that still speaks in the tones of those who made us feel small. You know that voice, the one that whispers, "Who do you think you are?" when you're about to take up space. The one that reminds you of every time you've fallen, every time you've been humiliated, every time you've been told to shrink. That voice isn't you. It never was. It's an echo of every limitation others tried to place on you, every boundary they tried to set for your dreams, every ceiling they tried to build over your potential. But here's the beautiful thing about echoes: they get fainter with time, especially when you fill the space with your own voice. Your voice, yes, that voice that shakes sometimes, that voice that occasionally cracks with emotion, that voice that some have tried to silence, that's the voice the world needs to hear. Because when you speak from a place of authentic power, you're not just speaking for yourself. You're speaking for everyone who's ever felt small, everyone who's ever been told to dim their light, everyone who's ever been afraid to take up space. Every time you choose to stand tall in a room that once made you feel small, you're not just changing your own story. You're changing the story of that room forever. You're proving that those walls can't contain the human spirit. You're showing that those ceilings were never real. They were just illusions maintained by collective fear. But standing tall isn't just about physical presence or vocal volume. It's about energetic alignment with your truth. It's about carrying yourself with the quiet dignity of someone who knows their worth isn't up for debate. It's about moving through the world with the graceful confidence of someone who understands that their presence is a gift, not an apology. Let's talk about something that often gets overlooked in discussions about personal power: the strength it takes to be gentle. Sometimes standing tall means being kind when others expect you to be harsh. It means responding with compassion when others expect retaliation. It means maintaining your dignity when others try to provoke you into losing it. This is where true power lies. Not in the ability to make others feel small, but in the capacity to remain true to your highest self even when faced with those who once diminished you. This is what transforms those old rooms of limitation into new space. The most profound transformation happens when you realize that those rooms where they tried to make you feel small weren't just testing grounds. They were training grounds. Every dismissive comment taught you the importance of validation. Every time they ignored your voice showed you the power of truly listening to others. Every attempt to dim your light helped you understand the importance of letting others shine. But here's something crucial. We need to discuss the difference between standing tall and becoming hardened. Some of us, in our effort to never feel small again, build walls so high that we shut out Not just the hurt, but also the possibility of genuine connect. We become so focused on appearing strong that we forget the strength it takes to remain soft, open, and vulnerable. True strength isn't about becoming impenetrable. It's about remaining permeable to life while maintaining your core integrity. It's about letting experience flow through you and transform you without breaking you. It's about standing tall while keeping your heart open. Think about how many times you've caught yourself adopting the very behaviors that once hurt you. How many times have you found yourself making others feel small because you were afraid of feeling small yourself? This is the cycle we need to break. Standing tall doesn't mean making others feel short. Your rise shouldn't require anyone else's fall. The real measure of how tall you stand isn't in how you compare to others, but in how you measure up to your own potential. Are you living at the full height of your capabilities? Are you allowing yourself to expand into all the spaces of your life? Professional, personal, spiritual, or are you still containing yourself in certain rooms? Every room that once made you feel small was actually preparing you for this moment. Every challenge that seemed designed to break you was actually designed to make you unbreakable. Not in the sense of becoming hard and inflexible, but in developing the kind of resilience that comes from knowing who you are at your core. Let's talk about something that many of us struggle with, the fear of outshining others. We've been conditioned to believe that standing tall might make others feel inadequate. But here's the truth. Your light doesn't diminish anyone else's. The universe isn't running low on brightness. There's enough space for all of us to shine at full wattage. When you truly understand this, something magical happens. You stop managing your height to make others comfortable. You stop dimming your light to make shadows feel better about themselves. You start showing up as your full self, not out of defiance or pride, but out of respect for the gift of life itself. This is where many of us need to have an honest conversation with ourselves. How often do you still shrink yourself? Not because others are actively making you feel small, but because you're anticipating their reaction. How often do you edit your words? Not because someone told you to be quiet, but because you're afraid of taking up too much space. The rooms that once made you feel small have no power over you anymore unless you give it to them. The voices that once told you to shrink are only echoes now, and you get to choose whether to let them fade or to amplify them with your own fears. But here's where it gets really interesting. When you start standing tall consistently, you begin to notice something. The rooms themselves begin to change. Or rather, your perception of them changes. Spaces that once felt constraining start to feel expansive. People who once seemed intimidating begin to appear as they truly are, other humans dealing with their own fears and limitations. This is the paradox of personal power. The more secure you become in your own worth, the less you need others to acknowledge it. The taller you stand in your truth, the less it matters whether others try to make you feel small. You develop what I call unshakable presence, the ability to remain centered in your worth regardless of external circumstances. Let's be clear about something. This journey isn't about becoming someone new. It's about unbecoming all the layers of smallness that were never really you to begin with. It's about peeling away the protective coating of inadequacy that you wrapped around yourself in those rooms where you once felt diminished. Every day presents new opportunities to practice standing tall, but true transformation requires more than just maintaining our own presence. The journey from one who was once diminished to one who creates spaces for others to flourish represents the most profound evolution of personal power. Those rooms where they once made you feel small have taught you something invaluable, the precise blueprint of what not to do. Every dismissive glance showed you the power of genuine acknowledgement. Every cutting word taught you the impact of carefully chosen language. Every moment of being overlooked demonstrated the importance of truly seeing others. This understanding comes with an immense responsibility. When you've learned to occupy your full space in the world, you become a keeper of sacred trust, the trust of those still finding their way to their full height. Your journey isn't just about personal transformation anymore. It's about becoming the person you needed when you were still learning to stand. Consider the profound impact of your presence in any room now. When you enter a space, you bring with you every lesson, every struggle, every moment of breakthrough. You carry the wisdom of someone who has traversed the path from diminishment to empowerment. This wisdom isn't meant to be hoarded. It's meant to be shared through action, through presence, through the way you create space for others. Think about the last time you witnessed someone being made small in a meeting, at a family gathering, or in a social situation. What did you do? What could you have done? These moments are invitations to put your transformation into practice. When you see someone struggling to find their voice in a room full of noise, you have the power to create the silence that allows them to speak. When you notice someone trying to shrink themselves to fit others' expectations, you can be the encouragement that helps them expand. This is where many of us face our greatest test. It's one thing to stand tall ourselves. It's another entirely to actively create conditions for others to rise. This requires a new level of awareness, a conscious choice to be not just present, but deliberately supportive of others' growth. Let's talk about practical ways to create these supportive spaces. When someone speaks in a meeting and gets interrupted, you can say, "I'd like to hear the rest of what they were saying." When you notice someone's idea being dismissed, you can build upon it, acknowledging its value. When you see someone being overlooked, you can deliberately include them in the conversation. These small actions create ripple effects that transform entire cultures. Every time you use your voice to amplify another's, you're not just helping one person, you're demonstrating what supportive leadership looks like. Every time you make space for someone else to shine, you're not diminishing your own light. You're creating a constellation of brilliance. But this kind of leadership requires tremendous courage. It means sometimes standing alone. It means speaking up when others stay silent. It means risking disapproval from those who prefer the old way of doing things. It means being willing to be uncomfortable so others can find comfort in their own authenticity. Think about the environments you inhabit daily. Your workplace, your home, your social circles. Are you creating spaces where others feel safe to stand tall? Are you actively dismantling the structures that make people feel small? Are you using your presence to protect others' right to be fully themselves? The transformation of spaces begins with the transformation of interactions. Every conversation is an opportunity to demonstrate what respectful dialogue looks like. Every meeting is a chance to show how inclusive leadership operates. Every social gathering is a moment to exemplify how to honor others' presence while maintaining your own. The ripple effects of your transformation extend far beyond your immediate circle. When you consistently demonstrate what it looks like to stand tall while lifting others, you create a new model of leadership. This isn't about position or title. It's about influence and impact. Every person who witnesses your transformation becomes a seed of possibility planted in the soil of change. Consider how your presence affects the energy of rooms now. When you enter a space standing in your full power while simultaneously creating space for others, you transform the very atmosphere. The old dynamics of dominance and diminishment begin to dissolve. In their place grows something far more powerful, an environment of collective elevation. But let's address something crucial. The difference between taking up space and creating space. Many of us, when we first learn to stand tall, swing too far in the opposite direction. We become so focused on never being small again that we inadvertently create shadows for others. True power lies in finding the balance between occupying your full space and ensuring others have room to expand into theirs. Think about the most empowering spaces you've ever experienced. What made them special wasn't just that you felt safe to be yourself. It was that everyone else did too. That's the kind of environment you're now equipped to create. When you understand both the pain of being diminished and the power of standing tall, you gain the unique ability to bridge these experiences for others. Your journey has given you a profound gift, the ability to recognize the subtle ways people are made to feel small. You notice the slight shifts in body language when someone feels dismissed. You hear the quiet resignation in voices that have been repeatedly silent. You see the careful self-editing of those trying to avoid attention. These observations aren't burdens. They're opportunities for intervention and support. Let's talk about the practical application of this awareness. When you notice someone in a meeting whose ideas keep getting overlooked, you can say, That reminds me of what they suggested earlier, which I think merits more discussion. When you see someone physically shrinking in a social situation, you can create an opening for them to step forward. When you witness someone being spoken over, you can bring the conversation back to their point. These actions might seem small, but they create profound shifts in group dynamics. They demonstrate that power isn't a finite resource to be hoarded, but an infinite force that grows stronger when shared. They show that standing tall isn't about being better than others, it's about being better together. Think about the rooms you'll enter tomorrow, next week, next year. How will you use your presence to transform them? How will you demonstrate that strength and sensitivity can coexist? How will you show that authority and empathy are not mutually exclusive? The rooms that once made you feel small were actually preparing you for this role. Every moment of feeling diminished was developing your capacity for empathy. Every instance of being silenced was heightening your ability to hear others. Every experience of being overlooked was sharpening your skill at seeing those who might otherwise go unnoticed. This is where your journey transcends personal healing and becomes a force for collective transformation. When you stand tall while helping others rise, you're not just changing individual interactions, you're reshaping the very culture of the spaces you inhabit. You're demonstrating that real power lies not in the ability to make others feel small, but in the capacity to help everyone recognize their own magnitude. Consider the impact of consistent, intentional presence. When you regularly demonstrate what it looks like to occupy space unapologetically while actively creating space for others, you establish new norms. People begin to expect and enforce respectful interaction. They start to recognize and challenge diminishing behaviors. They learn to stand tall themselves and support others in doing the same. Your presence in any room now carries a dual purpose: to maintain your own authentic power while fostering an environment where others can discover theirs. This isn't about being perfect, it's about being purposeful. It's about making conscious choices in how you interact with others, how you respond to diminishing behaviors, and how you create opportunities for collective growth. The rooms that once made you feel small are waiting for your return, not as a conquered victim seeking revenge, not as a dominant force seeking to overpower, but as a transformed presence seeking to elevate. They're waiting to witness what happens when someone who understands both vulnerability and strength chooses to use that knowledge in service of others' growth. This is your moment, not just to stand tall, but to become a beacon for others finding their way to full height. It's your opportunity to demonstrate that true power lies not in making others feel small, but in creating spaces where everyone can access their greatness. It's your chance to show that the most profound transformation happens when we rise together. You're not just changing rooms anymore. You're changing lives. Every time you choose to stand tall while helping others rise, you create a new possibility in the world. Every time you use your voice to amplify others, you demonstrate what authentic leadership looks like. Every time you maintain your power while supporting others in finding theirs, you help create a world where no one needs to feel small again. Stand tall in your truth. Create space for others to find theirs. Transform not just rooms, but lives. This is your legacy. Not just the height you've achieved, but the heights you've helped others reach. This is your power. Not just in standing tall, but in ensuring no one ever has to stand alone. The world is waiting for the unique combination of strength and sensitivity that only you can bring. Step forward in your full power, create space for others to do the same, and watch as the rooms that once made you feel small become launching pads for collective transformation. Stand tall. Rise together, transform everything. This is not just your moment, this is your movement, and it begins now.